It has been a while since I posted, but I am back now. And I wanted my first video to be an honest one. Over the last few years, I have been shooting with the Sony A7S III. I loved it at first, but then came the frustrations, the lack of updates, the feeling that Sony just left us behind. So I decided to tell the story, not in one video, but in 3-part series. Starting today with the Sony abandoned the A7S III, and then I will ask, should you still trust Sony? And finally, should you switch to Canon or another camera? This is more than a gear review. It is about trust between creators and the company we invest in. And I want you to be part of this conversation. Basically, 2 updates in 5 years. I mean, that's no support. That's a neglect. In 2020, Sony gave us the dream camera, the Alpha A7S III. It was hailed as a revolutionary for filmmakers. 4K at 120 frames per second with clean audio, incredible low light performance, no overheating, unlimited recording, a true filmmaker's machine. And then silence. Months pass, then years, while other Sony cameras receive update after update. The Sony A7S III sat frozen, forgotten, or worse, ignored. So, what happened? Why did Sony abandon one of its most beloved flagships? And what has that silence cost them? And us? The A7S III line was legendary. From the original low-light king to the A7S II, it became a staple for indie filmmakers, wedding shooters, and also content creators. And when the Sony A7S III finally launched in October 2020, it delivered everything we had been begging for. 12 megapixel on back illuminated sensor, 4K 120 frames per second, 10-bit 422, rock solid IBIS, no record limit, and crucially, no overheating, a direct contrast to Canon R5, which launched same year with crippling heat issues. The A7S III was the camera that made people say, Sony finally listened. But after launch, nothing. Months turned into years, no major firmware improvement, no new codecs, no workflow upgrade, no advanced autofocus mode, nothing, nada, rien. Meanwhile, the FX6 came out just 1 month later in November 2020. The FX3 followed in February 2021, both sharing the same internal hardware as the A7S III, just in different bodies. And while those cameras evolve with firmware, the Sony A7S III remains stuck. Owners, myself included, began to feel abandoned. Forum filled with frustration. Some even asked if they should sell the Sony A7S III and switch to the FX3 just to get upgrade or update. Let us put this in perspective. Here is the Sony A7S III compared to the Sony FX3 and also the Alpha 1 or the A1. The FX3 received Cine L menu in camera LUT support, metadata flag, FTP upgrade, constant firmware attention. The A1 can advanced autofocus for bird and vehicle, faster shutter speed, time-lapse improvement, and so and so. And the Sony A7S III, 2 major updates in 5 years. 2! We had to wait until 2024 for Firmware 3.0 to add DCI 4K and briefing compensation. And then until 2025 for Firmware 4.0 to finally bring LUT support and workflow flags. Same generation, same DNA, same hardware, but the Sony A7S III was deliberately left behind, I must say. Trust me, it was not just me. The community noticed. One Sony user on Reddit wrote, because as evidenced by the lack of firmware update for the Sony A7S III and A1, Sony largely doesn't care about angering its customer base. Strong word, right? Another added corporate bureaucracy at its worst damaged the company brand. People, including myself, are already thinking of jumping brands. On EOS HD, a user said that A7S III could have strongly benefit from FX3 feature like LUT support and briefing compensation, but Sony held it back. This wasn't just disappointment, it was betrayal. That's another strong comment. Then, after nearly 3 years of silence, Sony finally moved. In 2024, Firmware 3.0 gave us DCI 4K, briefing compensation, autofocus aids, and in 2025, Firmware 4.0 had log workflow enhancement, short flag, and FTP features. These weren't small patches. These were big important features, but they arrived 3 to 4 years late. But then, many had already left. Some switches to Canon, embracing the EOS R5C or the C70, where firmware support was consistent, and others jumped to Panasonic, trusting the S1H or the GH6 ecosystem. Sony's silence cost them trust. 3 reasons stand out for me. You may come up with a different point, but here are mine. First, business strategy. The Sony A7S III sold well. There was no financial urgency to update it. Second, product segmentation. By limiting the A7S III, Sony could push Filmmaker toward the FX line. Same hardware, different support. Third, hardware limitation. Some issues couldn't be solved in firmware. You cannot add tally light or prevent overheating via firmware, but leaving out LUT support and workflow upgrade, that was a choice. Not a mistake, a choice, I must repeat that. The A7S III is still an incredible tool. Its low light power, its reliability, its 420 frames per second, no overheating, all that remain true. But the way Sony treated it is a cautionary tale. A camera isn't just hardware, it is a relationship between the brand and the creators. Firmware is the soul that keeps a camera alive. When Sony ignored the Sony A7S III, they broke that relationship with us. So here are my questions. When we invest thousands into flagship, are we buying a spec sheet or are we buying a promise of a support? Sony may finally update the Sony A7S III, but for many, the damage was already done. And that is the painful truth. Sony did not abandon camera, they abandoned the creators. What do you think? Did Sony truly fail us with the Sony A7S III, or did we expect it too much? Let me know in the comment below. I will be reading every single one of them. And as always, my friend, Hakuna Matata. May God bless you. May God protect you. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have not subscribed yet, please hit the subscribe button. Help me reach 3,000 subscribers. and also like this video and share it in your social media and with your friend. I think we need to rise up. We need to rise up. Right. Okay, my friend. Ciao, bye now. Bye.